Okay, welcome everybody. This is Simon Buckingham-Shum, and welcome to KIC, or at least KIC's virtual room for today. Um, uh, Connected Intelligence Center was created to help UTS to take advantage of advances in data science and analytics across all of its operations, teaching and learning and research, as well as business processes. I was just discussing with Mike Sharkey, who we've got with us today from Arizona State University, the challenges of a center like ours, and they have a similar one at Arizona State University, trying to bridge that classic gap you get between academics doing data science analytics research and then practitioners, 5 minutes walk down the corridor, wrestling with data challenges within their own university. And often the two just don't get to talk to each other. There aren't the incentives to bridge those gaps. Academics are too busy solving somebody else's big problem out there. And practitioners haven't got time to talk to researchers. So we're working very hard on here at UTS and at ASU on how we bridge that gap. And that's why I'm really delighted to have Mike with us today. Mike and I were just comparing notes, and we realized that we were both at the very first Learning Analytics Conference in 2011 in -20 degrees in Banff, Canada. And we've just passed our 10th anniversary of the Learning Analytics Conference just this year, therefore. Now, Mike is one of the top guys in the field, so it's a real privilege that we've got an hour of his time now. He's a practitioner, but he's very hooked into what's going on with research. He was VP of Analytics at Blackboard. He created one of the first predictive analytics companies, Blue Canary, back in the early days of the field. He's now, director of ASU's technology and data and analytics infrastructure. So he knows this field very well. It's great that we've got him here just to share a little bit of what they've been doing with tracking student activity and progress, and how they use that to try and support the students as much as possible, which is what our mission is as a university. So Mike, great to have you here in KIC. I hope one day I'll be able to actually give you a coffee in KIC properly. But meantime, over to you.
Thank you, Simon. Appreciate it. And actually, I have an ulterior motive. My wife and I, our children, are freshmen in college, are starting their college this year. And so a couple of years down the road when they're out of college, I told my wife once, she was talking about traveling. I said, I know a lot of practitioners and colleagues in Australia. What if I can get some sort of research or practitioner gig for a 6-month teaching and research there? She's like, yeah, totally. So all I'm doing here is laying the groundwork. Another couple of years, I'll be hitting everybody up for a practitioner position for 6 months. So that's my goal here.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for having me. I really enjoyed talking about this and sharing. I've been in the field for 20 years. To me, it's all about helping out students, using the data that's out there to do what we can to help the learning process, to help students. And from my side, what I'd like to do today, you seeing the share okay, Simon? Great. I'd like to kind of share some of the visualizations we put together for helping students succeed. And so what I'm going to show you is not very deep research-wise. As we know, there are some very good sort of exploratory data, informational data, and the value is not in synthesizing that into something that, man, nobody else would have ever known unless they did a lot of good research on it. The value is just bringing it to light, putting it in front of someone who can do something about it. And that's kind of where we focus. So what I'd like to start with is the charter at Arizona State. I love leading with this because if you see, we talk about student success. We're measured not by whom we exclude, but rather whom we include and how they succeed. And what kind of gets me up and makes me enjoy coming to work with my colleagues every day is that our university is here to help students succeed. And our job as data practitioners is to help those who are helping the students. We can put data in front of those people who are helping students so they can do their job better and support those students. We rarely work directly with those students. We work indirectly, but it is still a vital role. And when I look at that, I kind of think about how one needs to surface that information. And this is a nice framework because it's being very pragmatic. And so on this pragmatic side, what do we ask ourselves is, yes, thank you for reminding Simon. Sorry, by way of agenda, I'm going to go through 4 different dashboards and kind of show you what they look like and what they do. At any point, please feel free to raise your hand, and we can unmute you, or you can unmute yourself, and we'll take questions. So I love answering questions as they come up. So please feel free to do that. Thanks, Simon. So I think of this kind of context. First is, what's the information you're providing? There are lots of directions we can go with data. There are lots of direct data, inferred data, munging data together to come up with new metrics and measures. But you need to be very specific about what you're providing. Are you providing insight, a measure? It needs to be something useful, something helpful. So we need to be really specific about what it is you're bringing forward. A lot of times we'll make a dashboard and the title of the dashboard will be a question. For example, which of your students are at risk? Or which of your courses have the lowest pass rates? I find that's a very good tool, because by putting that question up there, you're basically forcing yourself to answer that question in the visualization. So one is, you need to be very distinct about what the information is you're providing. Second, and correlated to that, is who's going to benefit from having this information. So there's only a handful of players who might benefit. You've got the student, his or herself. You've got the instructor. You've got a advisor, coach, intermediary, and then maybe administration, so deans, program chairs, etc. I'm going to focus all on this, the third one, this success coach, advisor. Some institutions might have this role, some might not. They've been more popular in the past 10 years or so. They're someone who is not in the classroom, they're not an instructor, but they are there to support the student, point them to tutoring, help them with time management, talk about scheduling. They may or may not be able to schedule courses, but they can have that conversation. So what's the information? Who is this for? Who's going to benefit by having it? And then most importantly, what's the intervention? What are they going to do with that information? I always ask the question this way. If you put a dashboard in front of someone, I always say, what are you expecting that person to do differently that they wouldn't have done if they didn't have that dashboard? That's intervention. That, if you can answer that question, then we can talk about intervention. So this is kind of context. So let me kind of jump in and show a couple of dashboards. So I'm going to show 4 dashboards. And I've got 2 pull and 2 push. And this is just nice context for everyone. Pull is, I'm talking to a student at 3 o'clock today. At 2:45, before I get on the phone with them, I'm going to pull up their data and see what's going on. So I get a good idea what's happening. I could look at data about them, and I could learn a lot. If I just call someone and I don't know anything about them, I need to spend time exploring and answering probing questions. If I can look at some data ahead of time, I have a much better idea of where that conversation is going to go. So that's pull data. And then push data is, I am a success coach. I have 500 students who I'm responsible for. I want to see which of those 500 I might need to proactively reach out to. Hey, here's 17 of them who are showing signs of struggle. Let me actually reach out to them. So that's pushing data towards me. So no further ado, let's jump into a couple. So here is an activity summary. So this one is really a bird's eye view of courses. And here's what's going on in this course. And just context-wise, our VLE is Canvas. So most of the data is coming from Canvas. And then the student data is coming in there as well from PeopleSoft, our student information system. And we pull that together in this dashboard. We do a little bit of data work behind the scenes, some queries, some data that's in the cloud in AWS, and then we publish a dashboard with Tableau. So there's a whole kind of behind the scenes technology, which is not easy, but it's also not insurmountably hard. I only have a small team of a couple of people that help build all this pipeline and build the dashboards. So there's a whole architectural point back there, which I'm happy to talk to, but we'll see where the questions go. And then what is this showing? So here is a student. This student is enrolled in 4 classes. I can see ASB 327, NTR, CHS, HCD. Those are the 4 classes they're enrolled in. I see logins, clicks, minutes. So those are measures. They aren't answering everything in the world about the student. They are subjective. How many times have they logged in? How many clicks in the VLE? How many minutes have they spent in the VLE? And the blue bar shows the student and how much 33 logins for that. And the orange line is the average for the rest of this class. So right off the bat, I can see for this student, their logins, clicks, and minutes were significantly less than the average in this class. That tells me something, right? Because I don't know what 265 clicks means. I have no measure for is that good, bad, high, low. But if I see it's below average and the average is about 400 and change, that tells me something. But now I also have their course grade. So I see here the student is getting 100 in this class. It's actually ended, so they got 100% in this class. And the average was a hair below that, around probably a 90 or 95. This is an interactive dashboard, but this is a static snapshot of it. So that's why nothing is interacting. Most of it is all student data, and I don't want to share an interactive student dashboard. So you are seeing a static snapshot. So now I look over this whole thing, and I get a pretty good picture of this student. Here are classes. You can see this was taken 12 July. So now I can see some other classes down here. It's July 12th. They haven't logged in since July 7. So there's 5 days lag since they last logged in. I can see their grades. Here's one. The student's getting a 75 in the class, and the average is a little bit higher than that. So there might be a problem here with this student. But from a very high level, it just gives me good insight. I'm going to drill down into a second one that is in tandem with this. But you can see if I am a success coach, I'm a person whose job it is to help this student, and I look at this dashboard 5 minutes before I get on the phone with this student, I have a pretty good idea what's going on. I don't have all the answers, but at least I have some good context. I know the courses they're in. I know the activity they have relative to their peers. I know the grades they have relative to their peers. So right there is just a decent high-level view. And now in tandem with that is the gradebook. Simon?
Mike, I'm just going to ask, it's interesting because you might look at the grades and say, okay, well, this student's doing pretty good. Look at these grades. On the other hand, they're achieving above average, say, on that first row, and they're really not engaging online very much. So that's interesting. That's some interesting feedback, isn't it? Because it suggests that either the online activity is really not necessary or important, at least not for what's being assessed. And that's interesting feedback. If you had a lot of students doing very well, but really not bothering to engage very much online, that's feedback in a learning design perspective for the educator.
Absolutely. So you said it right there in learning design. So let's go back to my comment of who is the person it's for. If this is for a success coach, I might be very blunt and say, you know what, the student's doing very well in this class. I don't care about anything else. I'm here to help them to succeed. But you go to an instructional designer and you show this to the instructional designer, they're like, yo, wait a minute. Why are they doing so well? And now they're going to drill in and want to find out more. So we need to be very clear about who the intended audience is in this for, right? The data is just the data. I could slice the data in 5 different ways and repurpose it for 5 different audience member, a student, a faculty, instructional designer, a coach. So yes, that's a wonderful point that it does tell you more, but keep in mind the lens I have on here is for that success coach. So you'll see that through a lot of this. But of course, someone, the folks like us in this field, we're looking for all these other things. Geez, if I took it and I sliced it horizontally instead of vertically, I would have very interesting insight on this class.
Right, thanks.
Yeah. All right. So now here's in tandem with that, the gradebook. So now if I want to drill down, I can actually get into the assignments and see completed assignments and scores. So here's that same student who is getting the 75 on the class. So this is essentially a repainting of the gradebook that's in the VLE. I could see all the assignments. I could see when they are due. These are for ASU online courses, which are 7.5 weeks. So you can see the July 7 to August 11. I see this student's completed 3 assignments here, 35 out of 50, 10 out of 10, 40 out of 50. Here's the student got the 35 out of 50, that's 70%. And I can see the average is about an 87% for everybody else. So, while they did good on this 10 out of 10, these 2 larger assignments, these 50-point quizzes, they did not do as well as everybody else. If they handed in the assignment late, there would be a different color code on these. So we've had ones, think of what this is doing. Someone, if they're doing poorly in class, that could be because they missed a little bit on many assignments. They just did horribly on one assignment that brought their average way down. You could see that here. We've have cases where, all of them, they do great on every assignment, but then there is one highly weighted assignment and that brought everything down. So now if I'm talking to the student in a support role, I may not be talking about the content, because if they did good on every assignment but one, now I'm thinking, was there a problem? Did you have a sick child at home? Did you have a really tough week at work, right? This is an online student who might have a full-time job and a family. So I can shift my conversation because I see different signals when I look at this view. That's what we try to go for. This role, this success coach role, it's amazing. I don't know, again, different institutions are at different places. They are like a social worker. They're like a fitness training coach, right? They are supporting the student. We had a lunch and learn, a webinar with our success coaches internally a couple of weeks ago. And they were talking about their students who were confiding in them. I've got family issues. I've got medical issues. I'm really struggling during quarantine and it's affecting, I don't know if I should continue on my degree. And, of course, from ASU side, we would love it if the student would continue on with their degree. But if they are so distraught that, it's affecting them, we'll talk about options. We'll talk about delay and how can you change your schedule and adjust, because we want them to succeed as well. And I mean, these coaches, when they talk with these students, and then 3 months later, the student says, hey, I took your advice and I got through this course and I feel great, thank you. Or I graduated and I owe it to you. It's an amazing role. And so I love that our group gets to support those success coaches in what they do. All right, any questions on the visualizations, the data, how we're surfing it? I have 2 other vizzes that I'll talk through, but just want to make sure if we have any questions or comments, I am all for it.
Sorry, can you hear me there, Mike?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Fantastic. I have a question. Sorry, I can't seem to see my hand up button, so I don't know if it's...
All good.
I was just, these dashboards, as you can see, you can cut them a variety of different ways. I was just wondering if there's any thoughts about putting another layer above this to provide just some of those things you've been mentioning as insights for different types of users. So just, so on the previous one, just being able to say, having a summary line of the students below average in engagement, but over average in grade, just as opposed to people interpreting the diagram. Have there been any thoughts around that, or is there any reasoning you can talk around that?
Yeah, so actually one of the other dashboards I'll show kind of does that
Kind of does
to
that?
be
Yeah,
able
right.
to show who's struggling. So going back to this push versus pull, right?
Mm.
This is the pull. I'm going to pull on one student, but if I could aggregate all of them, I might be
Yeah,
able to say,
right.
geez, for the 60 students in the class, here are the 11 who seem to be lagging everybody else.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay,
Yep. Great. So yeah, I'll
fantastic.
talk
Thank
to
you.
that in a sec. Now it's wonderful, right? Not only can you re-slice the data in different ways, but you can slice it for different audiences. So, what if somebody wanted to say, we have dashboards that look at, we did one that was looking at the percent of students who passed the course versus percent of students who submitted assignments. So if you don't pass a course, you cannot pass a course because you did poorly on the assignments. You got a 70 or a 60% on each one and you failed. But you can also be getting 100% on the first couple of assignments and then just stop turning them in. So we looked at it that way because there the assumption was, if I was doing poorly on the assignments, that's an academic issue. The student's trying, but they're not getting it. So maybe we can improve the course. The other way, if a student stopped, that's probably something happened with the student, where the student's got something going on. So yes, we can do that and look at it in a different way. So again, it really depends on who you are. And so having that connection between, it's very much like, what's your research question, right? What's that question you're trying to solve? And so what my data team does is we either do that exploratory work on our own, or we work with folks to say, talk to me about what you're trying to explore, and let me help you get a data set that you could look at in R or Tableau or SQL, whatever, to try and answer it. So sometimes it's almost like a translator role.
Gotcha. Fantastic. Thanks.
You got it, Marty. All right. Okay. So let's shift to kind of two other ones now. So now I want to go to that push. So this is now show me students who meet certain criteria and bring them to the forefront. So I have two different ways of showing that. So the first is exactly what we just talked about. The previous dashboards had lots of different factors in there. Well, now I can filter it. So here's a dashboard. The student names are covered up for our privacy and your safety. But notice the filtering going on the right side. So I can now take this list of every student in every class, and I can filter it any way I want. So I could say, show me, the first thing on there is coach. So this coaching group has about 80 different people who are success coaches. Each one's responsible for hundreds of students, around 500 or so. So I could say, all right, I'm Coach Mike Sharkey. First of all, I only want to see my 572 students. So I could put that filter on. So now it would be down to 572. And then I could say, current letter grade. Let's say they're currently getting a C or a D in their class. So that'll now narrow it down. This one, it's down to current letter grade is a D in the class. And then I could go down to subject. Subject is MAT. Those are our math courses. So I only want to look at the math courses because I know a lot of my students struggle in math. Degree level of undergrad, so not grad students. So when I filter it down to students who are getting a D in math courses in undergrad, I get 57 students who meet those criteria. So there are 57 rows. This isn't the full screen, but there are 57 students who meet the criteria. I can see the course they're in. I can see how many days since they last logged in. So these students down here, it's been 1 day since they last logged in. So I know for a fact that they are trying because they're recent. Students up here, it's been 5 days since they last logged in. That might be a problem, I'm not sure. I can see their grade, they're getting a D, they're getting in the 70s, but notice, so is everybody else in this class. So Math 243 is a calculus class. We know it's a challenging class. So even though they're getting D's, you know, you could say misery loves company, everybody else is as well. Whereas down here, these are some of these algebra classes. Here, these students are getting D's, and the average students are getting B's and higher, 80s or 90s in the class. So I can filter this in any way I want. For example, let's say I was focusing on just this Math 117, this algebra class. I could put in Math 117 in the filter, just get those students, and let's say it comes up with 13 students. I would now have 13 students that I'd reach out to and say, hey, how's it going in Math 117? Do you know we have tutoring services available? Not sure if you're aware of that or not. Please reach out to me. Let me know if there's something I can help with. That's a nice kind of conversation starter to have. Simon.
Just on that reaching out, can the success coach now basically message that cohort of students that they want to in one easy click or something like that?
So no, and that's a really good point from an applications standpoint. So if you were observant back here, you would see this little launch Salesforce button.
Right.
So these dashboards are unidirectional. They are read-only. There's interactivity. I could filter and hover. There's that interactivity, but I'm not acting and putting data in. So this launch Salesforce is our customer interaction tool where I send messages, take notes, keep notes. Yeah. So that launches the Salesforce tool just for that purpose. On this list, notice this little steps to download. So I could download these 57 students into a spreadsheet, but Tableau is a read-only dashboard. So it's not giving me options to take action, press a button, send messages. So that is a bit of a weakness. Then you need to start getting into an integrated system, which is sort of a whole different world to be in.
Sure, okay, yeah, it's definitely something to think about. I mean, it's not a criticism at all. This is great to see, but yeah, how we join these systems up so that with one click, I can now message that specific cohort with something tuned to their needs.
Yep.
Again, makes the academic or the coach's life that much easier as well, as opposed to downloading Excels and what have you.
You're thinking like a true practitioner, Simon.
Sorry.
All right. Any other questions, comments on what you're seeing here? You can kind of see the power now, right? When you're able to filter down. I mean, again, the other point of this is scale. So again, I said the numbers, I think I said the numbers up front. ASU has 75,000 students on campus, an additional 50,000 students in their online programs. So scale is important. We need to be able to do things with hundreds of students and thousands of students because we can't service things one at a time. All right. Another one we have, this gets towards what Marty was mentioning. So now we can look at a specific course and do a little bit of implying of what's going on. So for this, we looked at course, and the context is, this is the business program. So freshman business majors. And the School of Business said, we know from the years and years we've been teaching this program that second semester, first year is Econ 211. It's microeconomics. We know that if students struggle in microeconomics, they struggle year 2, year 3, and they are more at risk for completing their program, period, or completing it on time. So this is a key course. Now, we could probably do an analysis and test that and see if that's a true statement, but they've been at this for a long time, and so we took them for their word. They said, Econ 211 is a key course for us. We want to know who's struggling in Econ 211 because that is an omen of potential future issues. So given that, we said, sure, we're going to take all the data we have, and we basically recut the data and we put it into a scatter plot. So course grade, which was on that very first dashboard I showed, you could see that on the x-axis, grade going from 0 to 100. and then time spent in Canvas is on the y-axis. So in the first dashboard I showed, it had minutes in Canvas. So let's say I've spent 300 minutes in Canvas, and the average for everybody in this class was 200 minutes, then I'm 1.5. I'm 1.5 the average. So you can see the y-axis, I would be at 1.5. So that's what is your multiple of the average. If the average is 200 and I'm at 100, I'm down at 0.5. So now those two axes are how are you doing in the class grade-wise, and how much time are you spending relative to everybody else. Now, I had a provost ask me, Mike, how do you know those are the two most important metrics for determining if a student is at risk? And I said, I don't, but I'm pretty confident I'm in the right ballpark. Because there are plenty of exceptions, but if I now look at the lower left quadrant, so I get students who are getting a low grade and are spending less time than their peers in this class, those are students who I might at least want to reach out and tap on the shoulder and say, hey, are you doing okay? So we basically enabled that. So you can set the filter, so you can see in the bottom right, it says the duration is less than 1, so they're going to be lower than the orange dotted line. And the current grade is less than 65, so they are going to be to the left of 65. And that is this group of students in here. And they said, only give me the maroon ones, because those are business majors. The gold ones might be a computer science major who happens to be taking an economics course. And they have a different advisor. So we're looking at these students here, and they're listed at the bottom, and we allow them to download them to Excel. And what this group did is they sent an email to those 5 students, and they sent it from the faculty member. So it was a different person. It was they called themselves a retention specialist. The retention specialist authored 5 emails from the instructor to these 5 separate students, and it said, hi, this is Professor so-and-so. We are 3 weeks through Econ 211. Please let me know if you're having any problems. My office hours are from 2 to 4 on these days. We have tutoring available. If you need it, just go to tutoring.asu.edu. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything. So instead of sending it to everybody or not sending it, we focused on who to send it to. And they've had very good success in the kind of feedback they get from the students on this proactive offer of help. So another good example of this push where we're able to focus, and you can see, you could pick different courses on here, you could pick different sections of those courses, and that allows us to look through and find what we want. And so what's nice is this complements that retention specialist role. The retention specialist, their job is to reach out and help students. It's harder for them to do that if they don't have this information in their hand. So going back to my first slide, the useful information is it shows data about student grades, student performance, and activity/engagement. Now, again, I've been in the learning analytics field for a number of years. I'll be the first one to tell you that the grade in a class is not the best indicator of success. It's got a lot of other things mixed in there. But if I'm there to help the student, I definitely want to see their grade because it helps inform me of what's going on. Is it a course issue? Is it a time management issue? Is it potentially a personal issue? All that is helpful to me if I can see grades and activity. So we pull the grades and activity out. Who benefits? That success coach, that retention specialist, that person in the middle who uses it. And then what's the intervention? Send an email to the student, have a phone call with the student. And understand, the conversation with the student isn't, hey, Mike, I see that you're currently getting a 64 in Econ 211, and you're spending 0.75 times the amount of time on Canvas that your peers are. That's not a well-worded introduction. It's really, how's it going? How's economics? Are you struggling? Notice here's a couple of resources for you that help. Now, yeah, you can send a blast email to every student every week with that, but that will kind of lose its efficacy. So by being able to be more targeted, you can get more personal and more direct with it. So that path has been working well for us. I think one of the last things I'll talk about is we talk about, I'll talk about this the last bullet here first. One of the elusive brass rings of analytics is quantifying efficacy. Did it work? Did it make a difference? Did it move the needle? Anyone who's been in this field, especially as you go to the practitioner side, as you start working with commercial products and you're trying to convince someone to use your product and that it's beneficial, how do you know show me that it works, show me the proof. I have been a part of a number of these. I have been part of ones that worked well, where I actually could show a relationship between using a tool and positive student outcomes. I have been parts of ones where I can't guarantee it made a difference. I can maybe show a correlation. I would not testify towards causation on that. I have been involved with ones where we didn't even try to do that kind of research because the intervention happened over a 12-month period and COVID hit after 4 months. And so there's no way I can say, was this because of the tool I used or because COVID or something else? In this case, with these dashboards, this was my approach. I have a colleague of mine, Paul Alvarado, who works with me. And I said, Paul, go to those success coaches, those 80 success coaches. He was having a meeting with them the following day. And I said, ask them one question. Say, does having this tool, this dashboard, has it made you a better success coach in your mind? And all of them said yes. Now, I know that's not, airtight, publishable kind of information, but what that tells me is the people who are using this are seeing benefit. I've always said, if you think you have a great tool, like someone will say, oh, we have this dashboard, it's been there for 5 years and it's great. My challenge is turn it off for a day and see who yells. Because if you turn it off and people yell, then I know they find it useful. If you turn it off and crickets start chirping, then I may not believe that you've got a useful tool. So from my standpoint, when we say to them, has this made you a better coach? That's part of my, if I turned it off, I think they would yell because we see, and actually we also track usage. So I can see 80 people have access to it and I can see who's using it day in, day out. So we know who's using it and there's absolute usage across the board on this. So that's my biggest one, is that third one, that litmus test. My other 2 points here, using data to complement human decision-making. I've been saying this for years. If you think of a spectrum of, on one side is the technology Luddite who says, we don't need any data. I've been teaching this course for 15 years. I can tell you every student if they get it or not. And then the other side is the Silicon Valley tech bro who says AI is going to solve the world and we don't need teachers anymore. I'm in between those, as most of us are. And I say there's absolutely value from the data, but it has to complement the human. Notice in my framework here, the middle box, who's going to benefit? Who are you giving it to? You're not jumping from the information to the intervention. You're putting the information in front of a human being, and that human being is making a decision. I really like that approach. There are some cases where it works, where you can say, if number less than X, then take action. There are absolutely cases where that might work. But a lot of times having the human there it just makes that human better. And then there's the cost of doing this. And I don't just mean the monetary cost. I mean the staff, the effort, the time. There's a bit to it, but it's not tons. We don't have 70 people locked away in a room over their computers. I started with a team of me plus 3 people doing all the data movement and the writing queries and creating dashboards. We've had student workers on the team developing dashboards. I've had student workers building out predictive models on the team, and they do a phenomenal job. So this is not something where you've got to be a huge Arizona State University to do this. It's absolutely within reach, and I enjoy talking about those kinds of things. So that's what I got. That's my content. Any questions about what you've seen, how we got to it, directions we've gone down? Go down. Ben.
Yeah, I really liked your point about thinking of who's actually going to use this dashboard or this item, that individual, who's going to actually benefit. Something I've encountered in the past, and I'm wondering if you have, is that you might create something with a particular audience in mind, but then other people see it and it starts to get used for slightly different purposes. Do you find that happens, and what do you kind of do in that situation?
Yeah, so no, it's a great point. What it means is, so data is a innately creative and exploratory field, right? You can't say, I'm going to do A, B, C, D, and then I'll be done, right? Rarely is it that explicit. So there's a lot of exploration and you see what's going on. But when you start to get a kernel of, hey, there's something here, you want to start thinking about this. Before you go too far down the road, you want to start thinking about who's going to use this, who's going to benefit. So what I did when we start getting our data in, and I mean, I have the advantage of having been in this field, but the first thing I did is I created a mock-up. I did it in PowerPoint. I did boxes and lines, and I mocked up this in PowerPoint. And it was just a bunch of bars and lines. It was not interactive. And then I sat down with 3 of those success coaches and I said, hey, if I had this, and this was kind of updated every day, could you use it? And so I sort of sold it first and then work with them. So kind of keeping this in mind and doing it in conjunction, because what you don't want to do is say, man, I found this great thing and I did I found this metric or this model, and I'm going to build a dashboard, and I know for sure everyone's going to love it as soon as I have it. And then you develop it, you put it out there, and everyone's like, nah, it's nice. Go write a paper about it, but it's not going to help me in my day-to-day job. So the sooner you can connect, which is why you want to think about this, the sooner you connect with that end user, whether that's the faculty member, the student, a coach, whoever it is, the better off you are, because then you're not building on spec. You're not hoping. You actually have a better development process.
Nice.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a process we've been following here as well, Mike. Get early concepts in front of people as soon as possible, so you don't go off and build an awesome solution to the wrong problem.
Yeah. Shabani, do you have a question?
Yeah. Hi, Mike. Thanks for the talk. I was just wondering about the additional context an instructor can add. Say there's a face-to-face class as well. So in addition to an online session where you don't know, if there is a class that I'm teaching, I definitely know a bit more about how the student is in class, how they do activities in class. So I was just wondering what more that can the dashboard provide to a instructor who's in that particular situation. I would love to have a bit more from the work that I cannot see in class, and how can I add? So
Sure.
If you have anything that's specific to that instructor from that context.
Sure, absolutely. So a couple things on that. So instructors are a fickle bunch. I'm sure many of you are. I have taught in the past. And so, know your audience, know what you're working with the faculty. So a couple of things. First is, what are the data we're talking about? The example I always give is when I had my predictive analytics company, I went to a university in the States, and we were talking about the different factors that went into the predictive model. And they said, hey, can you include classroom attendance as a predictor if the student will do well in class? I said, do you track classroom attendance? They said, no. I said, well, then I can't use it in the model. So you need to understand, are there data points, collectible data points that you can add? So if the faculty is making notes, taking attendance, doing something, absolutely pull that into the system because you can add it. So that's one thing, is it data that you can reasonably pull into the system? The second is starts to touch on the ethical thing of bias. So, you don't want to put in, here's a really interesting thing, and I've gone back and forth this over the years. When I showed this one, here's the student, and I could see all 4 courses they're in. Is it okay to show this to the faculty? If you're the faculty teaching CHS 300, this course, can they see the other courses? Most would say no, and it's probably right. But some would argue, yes, like I want to see it. If a student's struggling in another course, maybe it's not me. Maybe it's they're doing bad in all courses. Let's say their minutes are low in all courses because they have something going on. That's helpful to me. So you need to think about what's the information you're showing, and can it be shared? Is it biasing? To the point of what are some of the biggest indicators of student success? Race, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status. Like it or not, there is a correlation with those factors. Do you want to put those in front of the faculty and say, hey, this dot right here is Mike, and he has a proclivity for not doing well because he's Hispanic? Probably something you don't want to do. So yes, you can do something with faculty, but you need to go back and say, is it information you have? Is it the right information to put? Is it something the faculty can act on, or is it just extraneous? So there's no easy question. Honestly, I tend to shy away from presenting data to faculty because what I go with is they're good at teaching. They're good at teaching that class. Let them teach that class. If there is some support we want to do, we can try support externally. The faculty that really want to support students, they'll reach out. I mean, the only exception might be is if you get in a 300 student class, right? So when you have a very large lecture, then it might be nice to have some data tools to help the faculty filter down. But other than that, for me personally, I tend to kind of shy away because the incremental value of the data isn't as great for faculty.
So, Mike, just to jump in on that, I mean, the question of whether you want to show any kind of demographic data about a student is an interesting and important one, especially as we all think about, in the light of Black Lives Matter, etc. There is an active debate about whether the way we think about our students should be, quotes, colorblind, or whether that's just aggravating the problem because we pretend that all students are equally capable, agentic, and have equal opportunity to make choices, etc. And that's something that I've been thinking about a little bit on my blog about, for example, whether predictive models should be colorblind and willfully ignore demographic data and pretend all students are the same, or whether that's actually exacerbating the problem.
Yeah, it's a very valid question. What I like about what I showed you here, the classroom activity, is it's agnostic, right? I don't care where you came from. I don't care how many classes you've taken, what your GPA, what your socioeconomic status is. You're all now in this class. So it's looking at you versus, it's not saying here's you versus the other white students in the class. It's saying here's you versus everybody else. So it kind of puts blinders on for this one class. There's an advantage of that, but obviously we also look broader, and you absolutely have that issue.
Yes, indeed. Now then, Ming Jiang, you've got your hand up.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just have a question about the grade. I understand, yes, it's useful if we know the grade of students and try to reach out. I think that's a good idea if we want to help the students if they're in trouble. But I'm not sure other university, but in our university, most of the grades will come, at the end of the semester. Would that be too late to help the student once we know the grade? Because, most of the assignments, early assignment, has a very small percentage of the whole score. So is there a channel for students to, like me, raise my hand in the course so that you can just more easily to target the students need help rather than just, looking into the data of the student and guess? Because some students, they don't use that activity for a long time, or they don't log in for a long time, but they probably don't need help. And even the grade is probably too late. Maybe for next semester, but that's probably too late.
That's absolutely a factor. So I know at Arizona State, we have ASR, Academic Status Report. And what that is the instructor raising their hand and saying, hey, Simon is in my economics class, and I haven't seen him for the last 2 days of class. There might be a problem. And they submit that to the college, and the college will follow up. So that happens. There are tools like that. They tend to be university dependent. So that's for the instructor to kind of raise an issue. Students, it's a mixed bag. There are some students that show up at tutoring every week, right? They're there, they go to get help on the side, and they will go every week. Some will just stay in their little world and they will never ask for help because they're afraid. So, ideally you have multiple channels. If the data can show something is there, great. If the faculty says, hey, I think there's something challenging this student, let's reach out to them. So yeah, you want to have other options. And your point is well taken about the grades. In this one, it's nicely spread out throughout the class. But yes, sometimes you have a midterm 7 weeks into the class and a final 15 weeks into the class, and that's it. You may also have a class that doesn't have a lot of activity in the VLE, right? The assignment is read this book and write a paper, read that book and write a paper. So the logins, clicks, and minutes may be meaningless. It's absolutely a factor of this. So we understand there are cases where this doesn't work as well.
Thank you.
No, thank you, Ming.
Mike, can you talk a bit about how you train up the success coaches? Because they've got to learn to read these dashboards, right? It's a literacy. You have to be able to look at that dashboard and read meaning into it in an appropriate way. You have some kind of a training program that shows them how to read a dashboard?
So a couple things. So first of all, if you'll notice, we didn't make these too complex. Look, I'm a math guy, I'm a data guy. I love, box and whisker plots and scatter plot is starting to go out there. But look at this one, right? You're below the line, above the line. It's very, very basic. So we purposely did not get too complex in our design because of that. We did an initial training, and then we also have a Slack, an instant messaging channel going, so we're there to support them. What we found is the better way to do it is to get a couple of the success coaches who get it. There are some of them who are, they're a bell curve. Some of them totally get it, some don't. You find the ones who really get it, and you talk to them, and they'll tell you the patterns and the signals. And then we say, awesome, can you go tell your friends now? Go tell the other coaches. So we didn't do a lot of the training. We got the really good ones on the success coach side to do that kind of discovery, and then they train themselves, because it's better to learn from your peers than to learn from some schmo like me in the technology side.
Right.
That's a really good point, Simon.
Yeah. In the research field, we are interested in visualizations that reveal exciting insights, etc. But there's a level of literacy and competency that comes with that we forget when we want to scale this seriously.
Good.
Ben.
Let's take Ben as the last question. I got a hard stop at the top of the hour. So Ben.
Okay. You had one of the, I think it was the push dashboard that had student metrics in terms of days since last activity and course measure. I was just curious you've got current score there. What kind of other course measures did you include in that? And what did you think was important?
There was another one. It was, I forgot what we put. It was a couple of things that were already on here. Days since last, it might have been the above average, the minutes. That could have been the minutes or the logins. It could have been one of those measures, and we would just change that for the course measure at the bottom. So we wanted to give some option, because we don't know. There's no right answer. And it goes back to Simon's comment. And when those coaches, when they figure out how to use this, they know what to look for. Like they might say, hey, for math courses, it's about time because whoever's spending more time in math is a good thing. So they might change it to time in course for math courses. So they'll know that.
And you're sort of deliberately avoiding sort of setting your own triggers. You're leaving it up to the coaches to do that.
But it's a balance. You don't want to give someone 37 different drop-down options and say, hey, you figure it out. So you want to find a good balance. Give them a couple of options, but not too many. So that's the fun part of the data world, is trying to find that balance.
Okay. So look, we need to wrap it up. Can we have some virtual applause for Mike? It's very hard to show appreciation online. You've got some clappy hands. You can got a reactions button down there. Mike, we do appreciate that. And it's going to help us on our journey as well. So
thank you very much. And I love collaborating. I love sharing. Simon knows that. And so happy to have follow-up conversation if you want, but I hope this was valuable. And thank you very much for giving me an hour of your time. I appreciate it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. All right. Thanks everybody for coming, and have a great day.
Take care all. Bye.